It's okay. You know I'd never do anything like that, he said. Movement drew his attention, and he saw Brady wander out of the kitchen. When he nodded, Skylar said, Mom, it's true I have 2 puppies here, but I didn't take them. They were left in the woods. You bring those folks here, and we'll get this all straightened out, you hear me? Don't cry, Mom. Baby, they're saying such awful things, and they want to lock you up. Well, they're not going to. No one is further than me, and since when do we care what they say? You bring them here. I love you. Put Dad on the phone. His mom replied in broken sobs that she loved him too, and Skylar could tell the phone was taken from her, from the way her voice was muffled and a rush of air across the speaker. Dad? Son, his father said quietly, what is going on? Not really sure, Dad, Skylar said quietly. But Brady and I think it has something to do with the rally coming up, that really big one. His father sighed. I wish I could say it surprised me. That bitch Gray was looking entirely too pleased with herself when they showed up to start slinging accusations. Skylar shook his head. I don't understand why they went to you. There was a tired laugh before his father replied. They've been saying either you were secretly violent the whole time, or living out there caused you to revert to your feral ways. But either way, they didn't feel safe going down there without us to calm you down. You know how folks are about snakes, always so jumpy. People are dumb, Skylar said. We'll be waiting. Who was this Brady you mentioned? A friend, Skylar said. A wolf I know from college. Oh, right, that Brady. I really should have known. Skylar rolled his eyes. I called him after I found the pups, and he's been trying to help me figure out what's going on. We'll be waiting, so hurry up and we can get this over with, yeah? Yeah, see you soon, son. Be careful, but do what you think is best. We'll back you up no matter what. Love you. Skylar swallowed. Love you too, Dad. He hung up, looked at the beer he still held, and took a healthy swallow of it. Looks like the fun is about to begin. He stared at the floor, anxiety making his heart race, making him feel suddenly confined. He wanted to retreat to his frog pond, even though it was entirely too cold. The panic thoughts were driven out of his mind by a sudden flood of heat wrapping around him, the sharp, woodsy male smell of Brady right up in his nostrils. Brady was hugging him. Skylar froze, surprised, but then went lax, unable to resist all that heat, the sense of safety. Brady was saying something, but Skylar just lapped up the gruff voice, the soothing tone, digging his fingers into the tank top Brady wore. He finally drew back a bit when fingers combed gently through his hair, staring up into Brady's eyes. Sorry. Brady chuckled. No reason to be sorry, Sky. I'm glad you're okay. You were looking a little panicky there for a minute. Didn't know if snakes were as big on touch as wolves, but it couldn't hurt to try, I figured. He broke off as low growls came from their feet. Brady gave an amused snort at the pups, tugging at his jeans with all the ferociousness they could muster. Stop being jealous, you little miscreants. Jealous? Skylar replied. Are they mad I was hugging you? Brady flashed a crooked smile before he bent to scoop the puppies up. Hansel and Gretel don't want me touching their mommy. He dumped the puppies in Skylar's arms. Don't know what you did exactly, but as far as they're concerned, you belong to them. But their parents, Skylar said, even as he sat down on the rug in front of the fireplace to better hold them, bending his head so they could nuzzle and lick to their heart's content. Surely they must miss the parents. You would think so, Brady said softly, something in his voice spurring Skylar to look up with a frown. Brady only shrugged. I think this meeting is going to be interesting. Oh, the meatloaf. He bolted back into the kitchen. Skylar realized he was no longer holding his beer, though he could not recall when he'd set it aside. Well, likely Brady had. After a moment, he saw it on the side table and moved the puppies aside long enough to retrieve it. A few minutes later, Brady returned with food. Skylar took one bite of the meatloaf and moaned. Even the vegetables were good, something about them smoky and salty and milled in perfectly. He could eat the mashed potatoes and gravy forever, even if he wasn't already determined to do that with the meatloaf, which was the best thing he'd ever tasted. His mom's meatloaf was good, but geez, it wasn't Brady's. Don't tell my mom, but your meatloaf is better. Brady grinned. My lips are sealed. Skylar looked back down at his plate before he gave in to an urge to stare at Brady's lips. I didn't think you'd be like this when I called you. Like what? Brady asked, puzzled. Like, it's all so easy. It's hard to remember all those times you snapped at me or shoved past me and all that. I was convinced you totally hated me, which made it even harder to talk to you. Ah, Brady set his plate aside, then slid down from the couch to sit next to Skylar on the floor. Hell, I thought you were cute the first time I saw you, but you were always so jumpy, and when I learned you were a snake, I thought maybe you'd had run-ins with wolves before and just didn't trust them, which I can understand as much as I hate it. I've torn my own cousins a new one after catching them behaving like assholes to little guys. So I tried to give you space, but I admit sometimes I got mad because I wanted you to realize I wasn't a bad guy. It was stupid. I could have done a lot of things different, better. Skylar smiled. Me too. I never thought you were bad, just that you must not like me. But I always wished you hadn't hated me. Brady moved closer, curled a heavy but gentle hand around his shoulder, and leaned in so his forehead pressed against Skylar's temple. No hate here. But how about when all this is over, you come to my house and I'll really cook you dinner? That? Yes, Skylar said, heart sudden. He smiled. Yes. Cool. Brady gave his shoulder a light squeeze, and then returned to the couch to finish eating. They were just finishing up cleaning the kitchen when they heard the sound of approaching cars. Skylar shoved the last plate into the cabinet, and then went into the living room and scooped up Hansel and Gretel. They whined, clearly sensing his distress. Skylar took deep breaths until he felt calmer, petting them all the while. He jumped at the pounding on the door anyway. Sit on the couch, Brady said. I'll let them in. You don't give the pups up for anything, not until this is settled. If I have to hold them down while you run, I will. We're not returning those pups until we know it's safe. Thank you, Skylar said quietly. He fetched a blanket before he sat on the far end of the couch. He tried to settle the puppies on the blanket after spreading it over his lap, but they stubbornly insisted on crawling under it, and he finally let them be. Cold air rushed in through the open door, chased by the scent of his mother's sugary perfume. Sky, she exclaimed, rushing over to him, wrinkled face red and ragged from crying. She sat down beside him and hugged him tightly. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom, Skylar said. It's the puppies I'm worried about. She drew back to look at the little noses which had poked out of the blanket and made a soft noise as she pulled it aside. Poor babies. How did they ever wind up all the way out here? That's what we aim to find out, Brady said, and Skylar looked up to take in all the people piled into his living room. His handsome, quiet father, Mrs. Gray, and a woman who looked like a slightly younger version of her, and two dark-haired men behind them, one with graying hair, a rugged sort of handsomeness to his features. The other almost tipped over into pretty, and he had eyes almost the same yellow as Brady's. There was also a woman who looked exactly like an older version of Brady, face lined with worry as she regarded Skylar, the puppies, and then Brady, who must have been her son, or maybe nephew, but Skylar would wager son. Brady motioned to each person as he introduced them. Everyone, this is Skylar. Sky, you know Mrs. Gray. This is her husband, Ronald. Her sister, Micah Connors, and her husband, Harvey. It's their puppies you found. I'm sure they're grateful to you for their rescue. This is my mother, Angela. She's an intershifter liaison for our pack, and she's here to mediate. I want my children, Micah said. Give them to me at once, you nasty little... That's enough, Angela said sharply. Restrain yourself. There is no evidence indicating his culpability in the matter. Schuyler, would you please show us that the pups are alive and well? Schuyler pulled down the blanket to show the pups. My babies! Micah shrieked and bolted across the room before anyone could stop her, but stopped short when the puppies began to snarl and bark. Everyone paused. Why are they so angry? She demanded tearfully. What did you do to my children, you evil fucking snake? That's enough, Mrs. Gray said, leaving Schuyler gaping at her. Just stop, Micah. We'll work this out. Schuyler decided to ignore them in favor of bundling Hansel and Gretel close, petting and murmuring and cuddling them until they stopped trembling. They whined softly and tried to burrow into him, not satisfied until he folded his legs up, nestling them in the hollows, and drew the blankets over them. Looking up, Schuyler said, Nobody's touching these puppies until I know who abandoned them on my land and why. Brady stepped in closer to him, and to Schuyler's surprise, his mother stood up and motioned for Brady to take her place. Schuyler relaxed slightly as Brady's warmth rolled over him, and the warmth that draped over his shoulders seared right down to his bones. What he said, Brady reiterated. So somebody start explaining. Angela motioned everyone to silence when they all tried to start speaking at once. When they fell silent, she got everyone seated and stood in the middle of the room. Harvey and Micah woke up this morning to find their sons gone and no sign of how anyone got in or out, let alone with 2 puppies in tow. They immediately contacted their alpha, who contacted the council. Everyone has been on the lookout since then, trying to figure out where they could have gone. How did you wind up figuring Sky had anything to do with this? Brady asked. Everyone remembered the way he had that confrontation with Maya the other day at the rally. Angela replied. Other wolves said it wasn't unusual for Schuyler to cause trouble. I do not, Schuyler snarled, almost throwing himself off the couch, eager to be in a defensive position rather than helpless. Only the pups and Brady held him back. She started it. She always starts it. She's never liked me because I was a snake until I was 12. It never mattered to her that I was never dangerous, never attacked anyone except when I was first retrieved. I was just scared and tried to hide and only bit my mother when she first picked me up. If my mom can forgive that, why can't anyone else? An awkward silence fell in the wake of his words. Schuyler ducked his head and focused on the puppies, smiling weakly when they licked his fingers and whined. It's okay, he assured them. Sky's fine. Angela cleared her throat. I was told by Maya and a handful of other wolves that you 2 started shouting at each other in the middle of the street. What did my parents and the other non-wolf shifters have to say? Schuyler asked bitterly.